Thank you very much. Ms. Kuster, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to our panel for being with us today. I wanted to focus in on a different area of concern. This is with regard to a June 20th letter that 32 members of Congress sent to Acting Secretary Mr. Gibson, and it relates to the GAO report on VA's disability claims process for survivors of military sexual trauma. In the report, we learned that the current regulation for MST claims discriminates against survivors of sexual assault and should be simplified and improved. And it appears that it is due to the fact that despite a change, and I believe this was a court-ordered change in 2002, the VA changed the regulation to allow veterans to submit circumstantial evidence, sometimes referred to as markers, because often there is not an official record of the assault, typically because the victim was not in a position to report the assault that may have been perpetrated by a commanding officer. But it seems there's wide variation among the claims in these medical examinations and in this process. And this GAO analysis found that granting the claims ranged across the various states from 14 to 88% in terms of whether the claims were granted. And I think you'll agree that's a pretty broad range. What I'm wondering is, what is the process for training and updating and informing these people that are making these evaluations? And then I'd also love to hear a comment on the number of claims that were denied. This comes from a June 25th Huffington Post did a very lengthy article about the GAO report, noting that it really was more a function of where the evaluation was conducted rather than whether or not the assault occurred as to whether or not the claims would be granted. And so what has happened in terms of those that were denied, how have we reached out due to the high rate of failure to identify and grant these claims. So if you could address those 2 points, and perhaps Mr. Murphy will start with you and go from there.
Start with the GAO report. It's over the last 18 months, we've spent a year to 18 months, we've spent a significant amount of time and effort on MST in particular. As a result of the GAO and other attention around the military sexual trauma, we made the decision, and we saw the inconsistencies that you're describing early on. So we went back in and said, the way we're going to handle this is we're going to identify specific individuals, train them to the standard of this is how you properly identify markers which lead to the conduct of the C&P examination, which allows the rating. So what we didn't want to do was improperly deny somebody even the benefit of coming in and having the C&P examination to determine if there's some compensation due to the individual. So we went back in and targeted in each regional office specifically trained individuals and said those people and only those people are the ones that will touch MST cases. And the results of that, which are not reflected in the GAO report, because the GAO report looks at a large set of data that's early on in that 18 months and before process I described to you. So what I'm saying is the process that they describe versus the process happening right now in the regional offices, we're seeing different results for them, and it's much better results. The rates that we're seeing on grant rate for MST are more in line with all of the other situations around PTSD.
And could you ask the acting secretary, or in your office, could you report back to not just the 32 members of Congress that sent this letter, but to this committee and others that may be interested on progress beyond the date of the GAO report? Because these are troublesome findings.
Yes.
And if there's progress being made, we would very much like The American people would love to hear progress being made right now.
Happy to take
at the
that for the
VA.
record and provide updated information to the committee.
Thank you so much. My time is up. Thank
Thank you,
you.
Ms. Kuster.